Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Welcome to the Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist, an author, and the creator of the Awareness Integration Theory. So thrilled to have you join me today. I promise you it's very intriguing and interesting discussion. In this episode, I talked to Bob Kaplan. He's an author of his latest book, Grappling, Leaders Striving to Improve. It's a series of short stories that bring executive coaching to life. His unique style is both entertaining and offers a novel way of learning about leadership and self-improvement. So the book is based on his decades of experience consulting to CEOs and other senior leaders, including founders of companies. He's the founder and the president of his own leadership consulting firm, Kaplan DeVries, and he invented a 360 survey, the Leadership Versatility Index, that earned a patent for its unique way of assessing leaders. He and his colleagues are also taking a unique approach to delivering feedback and positive feedback. They place an unusually heavy emphasis on the positive impact as a chance to boost the leader's confidence. And his last book was Fear Your Strengths, which your best could be your biggest problem. An honorary senior fellow at the Center of the Creative Leadership, and he's got his bachelor's degree and the Ph.D. from Yale University. And he lives in, actually he's in Florida right now. You could definitely reach him and get more information about him at kaplandevries.com. I'll put that on the show notes so you can check out his website. We conversed about what it takes to be a leader. What are some of the blocks at times? How do you recognize those blocks? What are the ways to watch different growth in different areas, which are all needed, and not just be focused on one area of your life, and leadership in every area as it gets boosted, it really, really supports you, and how to assess for things that you need to move forward and what are some of the blocks that you need to remove. So I'm sure you'll enjoy the conversation as much as I did. And be sure to subscribe to my podcast, this podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website, foojanzeine.com. Now, don't forget, go to the app, Foojan app. Go to Apple or Google, and you can download that app. 7 days free. And in that app, not only you get to work through 31 areas of your life area and become aware and kind of clean the past and what has been an obstacle for you, and see exactly how to do goals for the future and how to move forward. But also you have your own AI companion who works from the awareness integration model. So the AI is actually meeting AI awareness integration. And her name is Mira, and Mira is your personal coach that you can ask any questions and she will answer you from everything that I've taught her, from all the things that I've known for 30 years. So I'm sure you'll enjoy conversing with Mira at Foojan app. So go to your Apple Store or Google Play, and then sign up for Foojan app, and then share with me your thoughts about the podcast, about the app, about the AI companion Mira. I'd love to hear from you and be able to connect with you. So now, without further ado, here's Bob Kaplan.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zeine, and Dr. Manoukian, 3 experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
Well, it is so nice to have you, Mr. Bob Kaplan, with us all the way from Florida.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So I love to be able to speak with you about your book, which is Grappling, Leaders Striving to Improve.
Yes.
It takes a particular character to want to be a leader, but then it doesn't happen that way. That just because you have the character, automatically you're a good leader. There's a lot of skills into it. And there's a lot of a process as you become a leader. So what are your experiences that led you to this wonderful book, which is you bring such a element of a storytelling in it, because you're sharing the actual stories of people who are going through conversations and things that they're going through their life, and you look at it from a different angle. It's not just the typical organization development leadership approach. It's very much an approach of who you are as a human being and how you think and how your outlook is, as I was going through the book. So what got you to look at this concept of leadership from another point of view?
Well, the book is not nonfiction. I've written nonfiction my whole career, and I was striving or yearning for a different type of vehicle to offer some of what I've learned, and I hit upon the idea of fiction. Now, I did not know how to write fiction, but I got a hold of a first-rate editor tutor who worked on the stories with me and taught me how to write fiction in the meantime. So that was an inspiration. As far as helping people grow, I've always been passionate about that. Starting in childhood with my younger brother, who got off on the wrong foot in, in second grade, and my parents thought, he wasn't as smart as me and his older sister, and I knew better, and I tried to talk them out of it. So this desire to help people and avoid having them get stuck in a bad pattern. This has always been a passion, and I've always been fascinated by human nature and what makes people tick. And it all came together in this wonderful way, and this the work that my colleagues and I do with senior managers. And so, you were handed somebody who's already very good, but could be still better, because there is no perfect leader, no perfect person. So you find, of course, what works well, we'll get back to that, but also what's the stuck point? Do they hold themselves back in some way? A typical thing is not direct enough, or they avoid technical subjects for some reason, and then you sort of get to the root of that, get underneath that to find out what the mental part of it is that goes along with the outward expression, and try to free the person up to be better, if that makes sense to you.
Very much, yes, because there is a way that they think and they behave based on that belief system or a thought process that they have, that although they might think this is the right thing to do, and then it doesn't create the result they want, and they possibly get caught into the same thing. And part of your book, as I was reading one of the stories, is like, this is not working, but because you're caught into that system, you keep doing the same thing over and over and again, hoping that it would. But it doesn't help until you really look at some of those belief systems that are internal, that have to shift as you can move on. Can you share a little bit about that?
I can tell you a little story. So I'm working with somebody, but it's been a few years, and we stay in touch. And he said he's the head of engineering in a startup that's 10 or so years old, but still establishing itself, making itself profitable. And he said, there's somebody working for me who's not working out, but I'm not able. I'm having trouble letting him go, and it was a lot of good-heartedness. This guy has a family, and But I said to him, so what's in the way? And he said, fear. And I said, fear, that okay, I can understand that. And it occurred to me to ask him, could you liken that fear to something else? And he said, an elephant. So you mean to say an elephant stands in the way of you letting this person go? He said, yes. I said, well, what does an elephant eat? And I thought to myself, bamboo? He said, bamboo. I said, can you imagine in your mind, in your mind's eye, the elephant in the way and some bamboo over to the side? He said, yes. I said, can you imagine the elephant moving over there and, partaking of the bamboo? He said, yes. I said, okay, make it happen. And so he cleared the way. I didn't stop there. I said, let's role play that. I'm that person, and you're needing to tell me it's over. Go ahead and do it. And he did it, and he did it perfectly well. I said, did you see that you're able to actually have the conversation, actually to let the guy know? And he said, yes. And I said, well, when can you get this done? He said, a week from Friday. It was Wednesday. I said, how about this Friday? He said, okay. And he did. Grappling.
I remember actually, in all the organizations that I've had and employees that I've had, that what I got stuck a lot of times before was the concept of I would come in as a mentor. I would even say it as a mother almost. I would come in from that perspective, right? And because I was also a therapist and I was working with a lot of clients, I would get very into all of these conversations with them where they were my staff. And I found that sometimes when I came from that angle, I also gave them the idea that they were someone who I was going to mentor all the time. And that the mentoring part was amazing. The accountability part was the piece that was hard. So when I needed to keep people accountable for what they needed to do, I would still come from a mothering angle of it's okay. And this is, yes, you're going to learn. And it just wasn't sufficient enough for the productivity of the company because
That's so interesting.
right. So at one point I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I cannot be having these two roles crossed because it doesn't work as the same function, and I'm giving the wrong impression to my employees from that angle. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, you bring to mind a CEO in one respect is how did he coach? And he coached like you mentored, which is supportively. But their styles of coaching, in whatever capacity you're in. And the other side of coaching, which is also the other side of leadership, is to be adequately forceful with the person. So I would help him to be more forceful, more direct with the people he was trying to help. How are they going to get better if you won't tell them clearly how they need to get better?
The distinction for me, where I found out, Bob, was when I needed to become forceful, I would come from my anger. And that would ruin a lot of the relationship which I had built already as a supportive person. And then I would grapple, your book name, I would grapple with this concept, and then I would get angry inside myself. And then when I needed to be forceful, the forcefulness wasn't coming from still the supportive coaching. It was now coming from my anger. And people were feeling betrayed. They're like, I cannot believe that after all these years that you've been this way, like you suddenly switched on me. And I'm like, I didn't switch, but it was that anger in me that would come out. That's what I had noticed.
I'm sure you were insightful about that and how it got to be that way, right? Meaning probably waiting too long to speak that truth to the person. So what I found in my work is that structure helps. And so you establish with the person, uh, you're committed to change in this way. And then you have touch points. For example, talk to the people, we do this, talk to the people around the individual, get a reading on how they're doing on that dimension. And then when you get together with the person, it isn't you having to hold the person accountable only. It's the reality as other people experience it.
So the structure also brings the whole system where people become accountable to everyone, not just one person, because they're accountable to the whole system. And companies are systems. It's not just one person working.
Yes. One of my biggest successes is with somebody who failed to change. Does that get your interest? He failed to change. I failed to help him change.
Yes.
Somebody extremely capable, intellectual horsepower and just plain horsepower. But the problem with that is he did too much. And so it occurred to me and when I interviewed people around him, including the people on his team, it occurred to me to ask people to split 100 points between this guy's tendency to rely on himself versus his tendency to rely on his team. 2-to-1 rely on himself. He accepted that and everything that went around it, but as the months went by, I wasn't sure he was actually changing. So I persuaded him to have us go back in and get a reading on how he was doing, on shifting the emphasis from depend on me so much to depend more on the team. And also just asked the people working for him, has he changed? Well, he hadn't changed. The finding on that depend on self, depend on team hadn't moved at all, still 2-to-1. So I got on the video call with him and didn't go over the data. And I was sweet as pie in not a saccharine way, in a natural way, like I'm talking with you. And I said, so Bill, the data says you haven't changed. And I let him respond. And I said, but that's okay. We've learned something, which is we cannot depend on you to change. So let's take at it. Let's approach it from a different angle. Let's tighten the team around you. Right now, there are 15 people reporting to you, and when you have meetings, the tendency is to do most of the talking, which was also a problem with him. Why don't you constitute a small team, 5 or 6 people, whoever deserves to have a seat at that table, and that will help to bring out collaboration in you. And he agreed to that and put that team in place, which I helped him to do. And the team is now, in fact, functioning, and he's better balanced because we don't have to, types like you and me are helpers. We don't have to get the person changed. Let's say there's more than one way to get the job done.
In your book, you talk about a strong outside voice as a guide. Is that what you're sharing also when you have your team being the outside voice for the guide because they're giving you different types of feedback?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. We are guides, yes. But
Yes.
What else are you asking me? Sorry.
What I got from your book is that you strongly suggest that using an outside voice, a guide, which is important to initiate and sustain change and to be able to find a suitable person or a team outside of us, which becomes this kind of like the mirror feedback for us.
Yes, of course. Well, I don't need to tell you that it's hard to be subjective about oneself. I mean, to be objective about oneself. It's very easy to be subjective. And so, first of all, it helps to see yourself as other people see you. Now, you can go around asking people, how do you see me? And I wouldn't discredit that approach. It can be helpful to have somebody like you or me talk to the people around an individual and say, what does this person do well? Could this person do better? And then feed that back to the individual. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you just dump feedback in somebody's lap, they may struggle. They may not get full advantage of it. So somebody like you and me can say, well, this is what really stands out, and this is less important. And don't be distracted by one disgruntled person. Put that aside. We're looking for the central tendency here. The other thing is, as you and I were saying before, there's the outward leadership, but there's the what's going on in the person's mind such that they lead that way. So when you start getting inside a person's mind, then you need a guide like you or me to help the person put their finger on what's going on, what are their beliefs, what are their fears, what are their desires that produce the behavior that doesn't work that well.
Yes. And I think it really helps to also find the system and the structure to create that. There's also the concept of sometimes we do things in best of intention, but there's another part of us that shows up and meddles. And if we don't see it that way, we don't find what that meddling is. For example, when I was sharing with you, there was a part of me that took on this style of the supportive and the momminess in that it's hard for me to hold them accountable. And underneath it was a lot more of this concept of me needing to be liked, needing to be, admired, needing to be, to be like, I'm the good guy. And then anything else but that, it would portray to me that they won't like me. They will get angry at me. They will go talk behind my back to my other staff. And so all of those other fears would show up in front of me, and then it would lead me to go back into kind of like placating and doing half of the time, doing their work in order just to keep them liking me. Again, it doesn't work, obviously, for the bigger picture of the company. So, but these are all the things that showed up for me underneath. And you also talk about that in your book about how much either childhood issues or unrealistic expectations, undue fears, ego needs, all of these kind of crawl in without us noticing and becoming a hindrance.
Well, definitely. I appreciate what you're saying about yourself. You're being very personal, and what you're saying is that the helpers need to work on themselves because we're not fully formed either, right? If I can reciprocate, I also will lead groups that are learning groups, and I used to feel, but didn't really know it well enough, that my own need to achieve had to be somehow satisfied, and which means that I needed to help every single person in that group move, and I had to become clear in my mind. No, your need for achievement, it doesn't belong here, it needs to be within bounds, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. In working with people in this group.
Yeah.
But the question of what goes on in a person's mind that hinders their performance, I mean, a simple thing, Foojan, I consulted to somebody who was very good at the technical part of his job, super smart, and very good at getting results, but wasn't that good at relationships. And I thought to ask him, so what's your model of leadership? And he said, knowing things and getting things done. That was his mental model. Where is relationships in his conception of the job? But it became obvious, he needed to put that in his mental model, relationships. In other words, he needed to place importance on that alongside of knowing things and getting things done.
Yes. And the part that you're talking about in how to bring that all around like a 360 kind of angle, where if someone is too relational, can they bring the other angle into it? If they're not bringing the relational, how could they, kind of bring that? And I know that you have created evaluation systems in your work. Can you share a little bit about those evaluation systems?
Yes. Well, our leadership model, the leadership model that
Underpins.
yes, underpins that tool is two yin-yang dualities. And you were actually just speaking to those pairs of opposites that people can see as opposites, or they can see them as complements to each other, and between the two of them, they make the whole. So in our leadership model, there are two of those. One is strategic versus operational, plan versus get it done. How much emphasis does the person place on one versus the other, and the elements under the dimensions underneath each of those, and how good are they at each of them? The other duality is forceful versus enabling. We've been talking about that. And the tool, which actually got a patent, uses this rating scale on any of these dimensions under those four headings. Does this person do the right amount in general, too little to varying degrees, too much to varying degrees? And so what that scale picks up is not just strengths and weaknesses, but strengths overdone, which often is the problem, right? A person identifies so powerfully with something, or some feature of them comes very naturally, and they, without maybe realizing it, do too much of it. But the more, and also, or it can also be a case of this mentality that more is better. You place so much value on it, and that you maximize it, and you're not aware of the ill effects of maximizing it. Secondly, you are not aware of what you're trading off, which is the opposite side.
Absolutely. Everyone, Grappling, Leading, Striving to Improve by Robert Kaplan. When you talk about as they're going and looking at these dualities, there's a way that something inside blocks, right? Or something inside blocks, or something from an outside blocks, right? How do you go about finding what these kind of blocks and blockers are so that you could change them?
So this is probably a good time to talk about the uses of positive feedback.
Okay.
And what's interesting about positive feedback is a person is going to get a report, and it includes the positives and the negatives. But I'm interested in your experience of this. Leaders on all the inhabited continents are attracted to the negative feedback like a moth to the flame. So in exploiting the positive feedback, first got to get their attention, because they don't value it as much. It's not that they don't at all, but emotionally they're drawn to what's not working, and that's what that's what I can do something about, is the mentality. So it's become clear to me in the last couple of years that feedback is for confidence, and it's positive feedback that is the vehicle for boosting a person's confidence. And as you and I know, even the most confident person, that their sense of their self isn't made of rock. And people in challenging jobs can have their confidence shaken one way or another, or there may be part of their repertoire that they're less sure of. So we serve up the positive feedback, everything that the people we interview say is good about the person. Maybe there's some very positive ratings as well. We hand it to the person, and it's like a glass of positive reinforcement. Here, this is for you. Some leaders won't take the glass, metaphorically speaking. Others take a sip and they put the glass down. It's not easy to accept high regard. It's very much like the way people respond to compliments. Deflect it, squirm, and so something's going on there. But what's your sense of what makes that such a sort of touchy subject? What's good about me?
My experience has been that with clients, with leaders, with company group, it's what you said first, which is, yeah, I know this, but let me focus on the things that I got to change. Because obviously, if this is the thing that is in me, I don't need to change it. And then many times they'll take it for granted because they're looking at focusing on things that are supposed to be changing, but not knowing that their strength is in those pillars that they already are doing, and they're good for whatever they're doing and moving forward. But more than anything, that's one angle. Another angle, I know that people get anxious. The same thing I was sharing with you, like people want to be liked, admired. Some people want to be adored, admired. And be liked, to be a part of the team. And so they're really invested into changing everything so that nobody will ever give you a negative feedback. And so they go after that in order to, make it better so that they get an A all the time on everything. And then you're right about even when people get an A, then it's like, okay, now what's next? Like even this is now, all right, I reached this and I don't have to change it. So I want to go to the next level. So I do think that our brain usually goes after negativity, holds the negativity because of wanting to change it to be a part of the tribe, in a sense.
Yes, possibly also that's a threat, and threat, galvanizes our attention. So we've long known that the positive feedback is beneficial, can help a person develop as much as the negative feedback, and we've always encouraged people to let it sink in. What's different lately is when it's obvious to me and the other person that they're not able to accept the positive feedback, we stop and say, well, what's blocking the way? What's blocking the uptake of the positives? So, for example, working with somebody who got a 94 on overall effectiveness, an A, which includes results and leadership, and was not able to just accept it. Maybe it mattered that he was raised Catholic, and there were strictures, and a strong conscience. I think in his case, his parents stressed humility, and what eventually came out is he couldn't accept it because it would violate his, this principle of being humble and not getting a swelled head and not being arrogant. So we didn't get that far in the initial meeting, but we visited that theme from time to time, and eventually it occurred to me to ask him to put a name on that blocker, and he said the down player. It would downplay or discount the positives that he would get, not just from a type like me, but at work in any form. And so eventually he was able, like that elephant, he was able to sort of move it aside and appreciate how much he was appreciated. And we got on a call maybe a year later, and he said, I'm more confident. I am more comfortable with myself. And that allayed some of the anxiety that he carried. Big job, but it was superfluous, extra anxiety that he didn't need, given how good he was. and then he eased up on the people who work for him as well.
I
So
also worked with clients where they had a hard time taking the positive because they didn't want to come across as cocky to other people. Another one was, but if I accept all my confidence, I'm just going to be lazy and I'll just won't motivate myself to do anything else and change anything. So they thought they always had to have the whip to get themselves to move forward. So there's a lot of different reasons where the way they were raised, it would show up for them and say, no, you have to consistently move forward. And it also had to do a lot with their parenting, how they were parented. If the way that they were parented was constantly, what they didn't do was part of the communication, and what they did was like, so what? That's the way it's supposed to be.
yeah, and good is not good enough.
Good is not good enough. Yeah.
I like the examples you gave. The story Wronged features a character who had trouble accepting the positive feedback because he was afraid of becoming complacent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So,
We're kind of getting close to the end. What is it that we haven't shared that you want our audience to really know about your patented styles or the book Grappling? What is it that you want them to know about how to bring themselves into a space of not only positivity, but moving forward, kind of minimizing the grappling or grappling is good. I'm not saying it's not, but it's more like how to come to terms with it sooner than later, to kind of be able to ponder those dualities, because those dualities will always be there, right? There's always a part of us which has that, but somehow to be able to move past them and not get caught into them.
well, the most general thing I can say, and you might say it as well, is to commit to improving and growing and stay true to that commitment all the time. Don't settle for less. Don't say that's my nature, therefore I can't do anything about it. If it's not working that well, do something about it. What I'd like to offer, Foojan, is an excerpt from one of the stories to help your audience get a sense of what these stories, they are not case studies. These are short stories that do bring to life what it's like to work on yourself with the help of somebody like you or me. So it's a short passage, an exchange between a senior guy and his wife. His name is Gideon, and he's the number 2 person in a big architectural firm. And the founder and head is about to step down, and Gideon is a strong candidate to replace him. So the day before this fateful decision, Gideon says to his wife, Deborah, geez, there's so much riding on this. And she says, as if I didn't know, I detest that place. The words exploded from her mouth. Detest, he says, that bad? I had no idea. She says, of course you didn't. But he says, hasn't the place been good to us? She waved that aside. But we're able to send the kids to private school and look at the neighborhood we live in. She says, you can justify it all you want. Your life's out of whack, way out of whack. And he says, but don't we have to make sacrifices in life? She says, would you please get off of it, Gideon? You're trying my patience. He says, I can't do anything right. She says, neither can I. I let this build up and now the dam has burst. What's your reaction to that excerpt from these short stories?
Well, there's an opening, there's a reality that we have to face, and it doesn't matter how much we justify and go into the denial, that ultimately we have to face some things to move forward and create the courage to move forward. And it seems like the outside voice, which is the wife, is sharing what needs to be inside and hold back, and hold forward, kind of like call forward to the next level.
Yes. These stories aren't confined to the leader at work, as this excerpt shows. You see the leader in his or her personal life.
Yes.
And sometimes the spouse, male or female, plays an active coaching role along with the professional. The other thing I want to say is, like any short story, you get to the end of it and you're not told what it means and you're not told what to do about it. My posture is we're not going to insult the intelligence of the reader, but the stories are instructive anyway. And I hear over and over again, there are many takeaways unique to you personally, but also sort of built into the stories. So this book brings to life what it's like to work on yourself. You get a vicarious experience of 8 different people striving to improve and the struggle with themselves. The very last thing I'll say is the fight is with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Grappling, Leaders Striving to Improve by Robert Kaplan. Where can people find you?
Our firm is Kaplan DeVries, DeVries spelled D-E-V as in Victor, R-E-I-S. They can call me on my cell phone, 646-673-6969. I'd be happy to talk with anybody about anything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. It was very good engaging with you.
Beautiful. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy developed by Dr. Foojan Zeine is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing awareness integration therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.